Alright, we've got another really small update today. Let's see. Let's get that open real quick. And we got Legend of the Galactic Heroes, blah blah blah, Season 3. Regions A and B. Come on, camera, I can't see. It's an English dub, I think. The real war has only just begun. I kind of knew that this month would be a little on the light side. Excuse me. Oh well. Sometimes all you can do is just appreciate what you have. So we've got 36. Okay, yeah, I was thinking, why does this seem off? But it isn't off. It starts at episode 25. It's 36. So that means every season has been 12 episodes. I thought for some reason the previous ones were like 12 and 13. I'm like, well, why is this one there and why is 36 still such a round number? But obviously I couldn't math. Well, let's see, it's not quite in there right, so I guess we'll go ahead and do that. I guess that feels better. Is it really better? I don't think so. Sorry. That's about right. Alright. Yeah, I know. Small update this week, but here's this week's anime Blu-ray collection update. Alright, to begin with, watched Disc 2 of One Piece Season 12, Voyage 3 here. Still fun, although they did finally introduce us a little bit more to Emperor Kaido. And I didn't care so much for that. It's like, it felt like it kept doing this thing, but instead of endearing me to any quirks of the character, it just kind of annoyed me. But then outside of that, it was actually pretty fun. You know, like I mentioned, the previous one was fun. This one was fun as well. I really do like Carrot hanging out with our group of characters. She's like throwing a wrench into a machine or something like that. It's kind of a complete chaos that's just fun. She's like a really bad influence on Luffy, and that's just funny. And I don't know, it was just overall funny and entertaining, and just, you know, yeah. Not sure what else I would have to say about that. Let's see, going up on the list of stuff that's outside of currently airing stuff, I did watch Konosuba Legend of Crimson. That would be the Konosuba movie, which I guess, I'm not sure how you would call it, but it would definitely be the only movie that's out, and it's the one that takes place after Season 2 and before the currently... Well, I don't know about before the currently airing, because I get the impression that the currently airing... I get the impression the current one is maybe about Megumin when she's in school. And I say this having looked at nothing other than just the front of it and its name and thinking, this feels like it's a story from the past and not the taking place after this movie. Contents of the movie, there's a lot of things in it that are quite fun. It felt a little off. If I were to take a guess, the main problem is just that it's a movie. I don't feel like they messed up the pacing per se. I think it's mostly just that it's a lot to take in one big sitting, I suppose, for me. Where I do like it being chopped up into chunks, and I feel like Konosuba as a series is better for having moments that stand out when you have those breathers, I guess. But beyond that, it was okay. I'd probably say Season 2 of Konosuba is still my favorite content out there. Season 1 had some really great stuff to it too. And something about the way this one ended, it's like, I guess that sort of works. It feels like a thing. It didn't resonate as much as some of the other moments per se, but yeah, it's okay. Let's see. So I recently heard about a series called Higehiro. After being rejected, I shaved and took in a high school runaway. I've watched the first 5 episodes of it. Some of my interest in it is it did sound a little wholesome-ish. And so far, it's done a pretty good job. There's definitely a little bit of that just kind of appeals. Kind of similar to the way Usagi Drop or Bunny Drop did. You know, Usagi is Bunny, so it's pretty much just saying the same thing twice. But, you know, there is this thing where, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only guy who's, you know, well into his working career who fantasizes about, oh, well, what if a girl who had absolutely nothing in her life fell into my life and I had to, you know, help integrate her back into society? You know, it's a weird daydream, but I think it's there, and probably branches from a feeling of contributing, and also, you know, that instinct of especially contributing to a girl. And it doesn't have to necessarily be somebody who becomes a significant other, but it's all sort of there mushed together, and it's not something that I think I would actually explore for various personal reasons, I suppose. But at the same time, that doesn't change the fact that it's like, oh, it would be kind of nice to do that. And there's been other stories sort of like this. In fact, when I first started watching it, I'm like, okay, is it more like Usagi Drop or not? And I think it's more like the prostitute with a heart of gold sort of story, which is pretty common, which is, you know, the guy encounters a lady who sells her body for money, and maybe she's not entirely comfortable there, but then he helps her out of it. And I don't know if those stories always have to have a relationship, but I think the core of it isn't necessarily a relationship so much as it's that feeling like you're kind of contributing, helping by integrating this person into society, which is a weird way to say it because, you know, to a certain degree, I'm not sure that prostitution is necessarily such a bad concept that you would say they're not integrated with society. But at the same time, that doesn't change the fact that there are some people who are in that situation who could use kind of a hand to, you know, get things right. Same thing with certain homeless people, etc. And I think similar to the homeless problem, there's a bit of a fantasy element to it where a lot of people are homeless not because, oh, I just need somebody to give me 5 minutes of their time, and then all of a sudden they can start getting on, you know, becoming normal, I suppose. But a lot of people are homeless sometimes by choice, sometimes because there's absolutely nothing they can do. They don't have the ability to communicate with people. They are just completely gone, broken in some way that prevents them from properly getting a job or something like that. And the people who choose it, you know, is my understanding, they don't want to be held down by certain concepts like, I mean, look at my fucking anime collection. It owns me. I haven't been ripping stuff on those servers for a long time, but it doesn't change the fact that part of me wants to. The reason I keep a pile here is partial because some of that stuff might be more important for watching or ripping or something, instead of just, like, completely boxing absolutely everything up. I mean, it looks nice unboxed, but, you know, to a certain extent, you know, even if I don't put as much energy into it as I should, and I would, and I could, it still owns me. And, you know, what you own ends up owning you. That's just the reality. And it's my understanding there's some people who chose homelessness because they either realize that or they feel that. They're trying to stay away from that. And I think for a lot of people like that, maybe it's perfectly fine out there. Maybe they're living rough, but they're not, hopefully they're not doing drugs. Like, I know people who are homeless and doing a lot of drugs are probably doing so in order to cope possibly with whatever caused them to become homeless. But anyways, I'm wandering a little bit, but getting back to this, it feels more relevant to talk about Higehiro as the prostitute with a heart of gold sort of thing, just because it establishes, it's not like, it says she's a runaway teenager, but this isn't like she's just some forgotten, neglected girl and he happened to find her the night that she was kicked out or something like that. She's actually left home for reasons I don't know, but she's also kind of gone from bed to bed. And if there's anything about the show that's felt off, it's been that maybe its understanding of sex is maybe not quite there, but it's not so far off that it's distracting or there. It's like, okay, it kind of gives the impression she just let her body be used, and there's a very real reason why that could actually be. But I would be kind of surprised if, that's not necessarily the case where, if you're not chaste forever, then, you're just not going to like it. There are people who definitely fall in the other bucket, and I think people like to conveniently ignore that stuff. And I don't think it's ever a good idea to ignore reality. But it doesn't feel like this show's actually doing that. It really just felt like, okay, yeah, she was just doing that. It was her way of coping with her lack of control in her life, etc. And if that starts saying, oh, wait, actually that sounds like a good approach. And that's kind of where it's been going, and what makes it work out a bit more. It feels a little real, and definitely in that, that's kind of heartwarming. I think I was using a different word before, but I forget what it was. So I'm 5 episodes in, and so far, appreciating where it's going so far. It's been more thought-provoking than simply provoking. So it's been good so far. I'm probably going to try and finish it. But, yeah, let's start talking about all the anime that are currently airing. Kamikatsu Working for God in the Godless World, Episode 2. I think we started getting a picture of more what the series will be like, which is a good follow-up from the first episode. Again, really chaotic ending to that very first episode. I didn't even know if they edited it right. Although it felt like there were small elements in Episode 2 that maybe were reminiscent, but then it's doing its silly thing, but I think it's establishing, okay, it's not that they're in this other world going on some sort of adventure and he just has a god protecting him. I think he's actually building up that world's first religion is, I think, the idea there, and kind of the benefits that will be coming along with doing that. With a very interesting twist at the end of the second episode, but, entertaining, I think. Let's see. The legendary hero is dead. Episode 2. Yeah, they're all assholes, but, it's okay. I guess some interesting things happen in episode 2. I don't know. I'll give the show more shot. I do think a lot of the characters are kind of not sure I like them. Not sure if it's giving me much to feel is very redeeming. Some stuff there, but for me personally, kind of drained a little bit about some of that stuff. But there's absolutely nothing else coming out on that day according to my notes, so might keep doing it. Let's see. My One Hit Kill Sister, Episode 2. I'm not sure that we got any good idea of what it wants to be as a long-term series. Maybe. Unless what we got is that it's not super serious. What it did in the episode was kind of amusingly executed. Not entirely sure where it's continuing to go, wanting to go. Whether or not I would care too much, I suppose. But, yeah. Mashley, Magic and Muscles, Episode 2. No, that's right. Okay, so this one was the magic examination to get into the magic school, even though our main character can't use magic. I thought it was all pretty entertaining. Interesting conversations, especially between the main character and the principal. Okay, and then it established some stuff that I think it probably mentioned what the next episode's going to be like or going to be about, maybe in the stinger or something like that. But I can't remember. But I do remember it's a pretty entertaining episode too. Not too it's maybe somewhat promising. Let's see, Rokudo's Bad Girls. I decided to go ahead and watch episode 2. Like I said, I didn't quite know what I thought about the theme. It's definitely going along the lines of our main character is becoming a better person. I don't think it's going the Konichi route, Konichi the Mightiest Disciple, where he's going to become the complete outright badass, but maybe just more well-adjusted. Maybe. maybe. Although they also introduced more stuff to it. That's, I guess, a kind of a weird ending. That one felt a little uncomfortable. The only reason I hesitate to even talk about why is just because I feel like it could also be spoiler, so I don't want to spoil it. It's just sort of, the way it was executed felt very weird. Maybe not bad, I don't know. Again, the show kind of has a problem where it's like, oh, these characters all, you know, have these artificial emotions for him for some reason. I say for some reason, of course, magic spell. But, it feels weird. I guess it's interesting because it's kind of the opposite of Eminence and Shadow. I was watching a YouTuber talking about Eminence and Shadow stuff, and how one of the reasons a lot of the harem characters in that are interesting and make sense is because they join the main character's harem, and it's kind of hard to call it that, but it's not anything but that, which is, I think, one of the things that makes Eminence and Shadow work. It's because they have their own personal stories. They're actually good standalone stories, and the way our main character, I guess, brushes along the edge of those and pulls people into it actually makes it kind of compelling. So it's like, it feels like they have good stories, and it's not just a convolution to say, oh, well, let's just make them where, for some reason, their brains are reprogrammed to do this. And to give Rokuno's Bad Girl some credit, it's, I think, trying to be a little goofy with it, but, like, not take it too seriously. But yeah, I don't know, still kind of weird. Too Cute Crisis, episode 2. I would actually call it a kind of floaty episode. Like, it had some amusing, interesting things in it. It's stupid, but stupid in a way which is kind of like, it's kind of cute. You know, which is funny because it's a show about being cute, or about things being cute. And so, the reason I call it an in-between episode is I didn't feel like there was anything that it gave that I would say, oh yes, this is top quality content. Like, I think maybe it attempted to, and this is a problem I have with anime that try to have pet moments in a show. It's like, to some degree, I'm like, guess it's kind of entertaining, but it feels like they get it wrong. Especially cats. You know, I grew up around cats. I'm like, yeah, show, that's not how a cat would choose to move. And I've probably complained about this before, but I think Too Cute Crisis is better, not when it's doing that stuff. That stuff, I think, would be a bit of a distraction as far as I'm concerned. Because if I wanted to watch a cute cat doing cat things, I'd pull it up on fucking YouTube, where I would see an actual cat doing funny cat things. Heck, I'd go to the old Inception cat video. I actually looked that up today. If you've never seen it, it's funny. Chances are many of you have. 5 million people have seen it. Actually, it's been viewed 5 million times, and maybe a dozen of those have been me. But, it did as a good setup for episode 3, though. And I'm kind of curious to see what exactly transpires in episode 3, because it feels like it gives it more to work with. And the show really needs that, because it's too easy for it to milk the main characters dry, I guess. See, I have here on my notes Otaku Elf episode 1. Obviously, I talked about that last week, and this just means I didn't watch episode 2. It's not that I'm necessarily against it, so much as, compared to other things, I just didn't feel like putting it on. You know, because this is all Friday stuff, and after Friday, you know, there's more interesting stuff and other things to do. So, for example, Saturday, Hell's Paradise. So, I think I had mentioned that as something that I was interested in, but hadn't quite fired up yet. And I have to recommend it. Maybe one of the most recommendable things this season. At least at this point. It's got a really good first episode. And I don't mean this as in, like, absolutely every one of y'all who ever watch episode 1 of it will enjoy it. What I mean by a really good episode is, if it's a sort of series you would enjoy, it will be good, and if it's not, you will know pretty well from the first episode. Which means it's a first episode that's got interesting, it introduces an interesting world, premise, characters, interactions. It kind of shows you how it's going to approach character personalities, stories, backstories, interactions. It's got interesting powers sorts of stuff going on where you're just like, doesn't seem like anybody could actually do that, but that's pretty interesting. And it's told in a way that's very, you're being told a story with great characters in it, and there's this element of mysticism also introduced in there that just like, ooh, it's kind of spooky. And that's all in the first episode. And I actually watched it before the third episode had come out. So I watched the first 2 episodes together. But just watching the first episode alone, I could tell this is a show I'm going to like. Now, whether or not I'll care about the finish of it, that's definitely up in the air. But definitely the case where it's a good first episode, because I think if you're on the fence and you watch that first episode, I think you'll know whether or not you're going to enjoy it or not. If you said, oh, it sounded good, I just haven't fired it up yet, I think it's worth firing it up. You'll tell from the first episode, I think, whether or not you're going to enjoy it. Second episode, actually really enjoying and interesting and well executed as well. I feel like it was more of exactly what made the first episode interesting and entertaining without like retreading ground or anything like that. It's like honestly moving forward and giving us stuff to digest and think about. Episode 3, I would actually say, could potentially be weaker than those other 2 just because, Jesus Christ, what a beginning. But it's still engaging in a lot of that same stuff, but it's ramping up that element of mysticism that, and you can kind of predict when you watch it that, oh yes, it's going to ramp up, and you're going to wonder and be curious and like you want to see more, because whatever this is, it's really hard to get a beat on what to feel about it, because it's nice and mystical. So, high praises for Hell's Paradise. All through the first 3 episodes. Definitely much stronger first and second episode than third, in my opinion, but maybe not by much. And definitely worth wanting to see more, right? Let's see, Summoned to Another World for a Second Time, episode 2. I'm just trying to remember how it ended. Because like I said, one of the issues with it is this is another one of those isekais where the first episode is spending all of its time setting up kind of the rules, but not really giving you an idea of what kind of series it's going to be. And maybe episode 2 gives a better idea. But really hard to say, just because it also didn't establish something. I've mentioned the status quo of a show, and some shows don't necessarily need one. Maybe this one doesn't, but it's hard to say, okay, I know for certain why this show is going to keep me interested. I'm still not sure. It's not bad. Definitely better than the other isekais that I've mentioned up to this point, I think. Although Kimikatsu is probably not as bad, but still, it's... I feel it's better than that one. Let me see. Next up we have The Aristocrats' Otherworldly Adventure, Serving Gods Who Go Too Far. Episode 3. For those of you who have heard me say this show reminds me a little bit of By the Grace of the Gods, I think you might kind of see some of it here. It's convenient. Our main character just happens to... Now, granted, there's some combat that happens there, but ultimately it's all about how the rules of the universe are kind of allowing him to be uncomfortably pampered, so to speak, in ways that, I don't know, it feels too convenient for our main character. Like, I guess maybe, did he have like a absurdly high luck stat? Did one of the gods give him a tier 10 luck blessing? Maybe a romance blessing, I'm not sure. But, it's not the worst thing out there. I'd say, actually, it's more comparable to In Another World with my smartphone than it is to By the Grace of the Gods. But, it still kind of reminds me of that at this moment, a little bit. I guess I just need to see more in order to kind of understand, because, to understand my feelings, that is. I mean, most of that is, I'm not sure that the show's given us a really good idea of what kind of show this is going to be. I mean, 3 episodes in, and if... Is it 3 episodes in? Yes. And if we were to use that as the metric, it would be, okay, well, our main character's overpowered, but it spends most of it where people are just fawning over him. Doesn't feel like that's it, because it's given hints of other things, and I hope it's a little bit more than that, but we're kind of, I guess, at a point where we're waiting to see where it goes with that. And maybe that's fine for most people. For me, it definitely weakens it a bit. Let's see, I watched the first episode of My Home Hero, and it was okay. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if other people found it to be really good, because, you know, it's not necessarily that bad. I really loved the wife. It's like, she's the kind of life partner you want to have. At least in episode 1. Hopefully she doesn't get worse beyond that. The worst thing I'm hoping happens to her in the series is just that she just gets dropped and ignored, and if the story focuses on our main character too much. But, you know, she was an unexpected breath of fresh air, I suppose. I mean, maybe it's because I'm here in the States and I'm just too used to situations like that turning into a fucking Breaking Bad. And if you don't know why nobody likes Skylar, or if you're an idiot and thinks that nobody likes Skylar because she's a woman, then sorry, there's no helping you. Because the truth of the matter is, she wasn't really a partner. But this wife felt like she was such a wife. And I don't mean like, oh, she's a girl and I just mean, again, a partner. You know, if I was a girl in the same situation as the main character and I had a husband that did the same thing that this wife did, I would be thinking the same thing. I guess the thing I'd be worried about in that case, though, is, you know, being anime, he would be, I got to overreact to everything, and, you know, sometimes that can get tiring. Especially since a lot of the tropes that I obviously, you know, the tropes from genres that I tend to watch do tend to encourage that sort of stuff. And you can ask yourself why I watch it, and yeah, I don't know. But, you know, overall, a good first episode. It's sort of like Otaku Elf. I haven't felt that jump to go to the second episode yet, but I'm not sure that I've given up on it. And I think, in fact, I would say I'm still a little more strongly connected than Otaku Elf. But to give both the credit, I haven't watched episode 2 of either to see where it's going to go. Let's see. In Another World with My Smartphone, Season 2, Episode 3. I'm tempted to call it kind of a do nothing in the middle sort of episode. Although I think it's possible that it has introduced some important information and set up in this episode that may come into play a lot more in the future. But as it is right now, it's kind of almost just more of a, we're going on our day-to-day life. Some neat things in there, some things that are kind of, whatever. But I guess unlike other series, since this is the second season, I guess it can get away with playing around with its third episode a bit like this. Meanwhile, I got a cheat skill in Another World and became unrivaled in the real world to Episode 3. And this one is a tricky one. I think this series does have the potential to be the best series of the stuff that I'm watching here, but it's definitely not the kind that's going to show that strength in these early episodes. Not that these episodes are bad, but like, if episode 1 was kind of introducing, I guess, the situation our main character is in and why he is able to isekai at will and how that may be affecting him, episode 2 was a slight exploration into how that's affecting him on the isekai side, but on the normal side it's just kind of showing that, you know, he's more good looking and people are appreciating him a little bit more. And I think I said this last week, but well, I really liked the way he looked while fat. You know, the show's trying to pretend that might have never been an issue if he was still fat now. Some of these nice things would have still been happening that happened in episode 2. Hard to say because it feels kind of weird by just kind of throwing a weird oh, he's cute now sort of thing. He's turning heads. And episode 3 kind of went more with that slice of life sort of idea. Like, if the premise of the show was that instead, you know, he was this fat, unclean, no motivation guy, but he saved a a god that was crossing the road. But he didn't know it was a god, and it hurt his wish that he would be more acceptable, and that God made him beautiful over the vacation break. You know, if that was the premise, how much different would this show actually be up to this point? And the answer is very little. You wouldn't get those trips into the isekai world, so you'd lose about half of the first episode and maybe little bits and pieces of the second and the third episode. But beyond that, just this moment in the third episode where he's which is, I think, the only thing that this is a hint about his cheat skill. It doesn't mean one skill, I suppose. It just kind of means that his stats are just through the fucking roof. Which I keep wanting to see if moments like that show up in the real world, and kind of did, where he just dodged the guy's punch and launched him into the ground defensively. And that's kind of the problem with the show, is its fundamental premise is kind of still being revealed to us 3 episodes in. And that's not necessarily bad, unless it's only 12 episodes long, in which case it feels like it might feel like it didn't build up to anything in the short term. So my hope is it's actually intending to be much longer than it actually is. I just have my doubts about that because they're definitely spending a lot of money in drawing the characters. And they do seem to be balancing that out by putting a lot more still shots of characters so that you can appreciate the higher amount of detail that they're putting into them. It's like, I swear, they probably have 15 animators dedicated to just drawing all the highlights on the hair or something like that. Yeah, it's tricky to say. It's one where it's like, if you watch it, you'll probably be enjoying it just fine, so it's probably good anime in that regard. But whether or not you'll feel like the time investment will, over the long run, be worth it, it's hard to say. Really hard to say. Let's see. We have why Raylena ended up at the Duke's Mansion, episode 2. One of the reasons I didn't mention for why I'm probably going to be more likely to just keep watching this is it's being simuldubbed. In other words, it's coming out dubbed on the same day that it's being released subtitled. In fact, it's coming out at the same minute. It's being dubbed so ridiculously? How about redonkingly fast? Okay, I didn't even say that correctly. Oops. But it pretty much means it's much easier to put on and watch in the background than a whole lot of other stuff. Content-wise, it's entertaining. It's definitely got little bits of those shoujo tropes in there, but it's not leaning on them as heavily as a lot of other shows. Like, I'm the Villainous, All Paths Lead to Doom. I mean, that one was so shoujo that you could give that to someone and say, hey, yeah, this is what shoujo like. And they're like, oh, I guess I see. This one's definitely still has stronger elements of that in it, but it does feel like it's trying to dip its toes a little bit into josei territory, which I don't think it's entirely doing that, because a lot of joseis really like to deal with real relationships that are kind of, more real-worldy, which includes, dealing with, like, sex with the opposite sex. But, this one isn't really about that. It's still about the kind of the story going on, at least at this point. And if there's elements of it that are kind of hard to follow, it's because it does still talk about some of the politics ideas of that world, and some of it's just like, I guess I get the general idea, but I'm not going to remember the names of any of these things that it mentioned. Maybe little details here and there. Just kind of curious to see where it's going, though, because it's not off to a bad start. It's definitely doing things that feel different. Although that could also be from somebody that doesn't watch a whole lot of this content. So make of that what you will. And then finally, at the bottom of the list, Dead Mount Death Play Episode 2, which I'm trying to remember exactly what I said about Episode 1, the previous one, because I thought it was still entertaining. If there was any problem with Episode 2 here, it feels like not much happened. And a lot of that is because the contents of this episode end 40 minutes in real world time after the ending of the previous episode-ish. And so I guess what happened was it did tell some people's backstories, better backstories on our main characters, so an important one, some side events that happened alongside other stuff, just to kind of catch you up on multiple threads that I guess were flowing at the same time as episode 1, giving us different perspectives on some stuff. And none of it felt like it was wrong to have, but for the most part, it just felt, I don't know, maybe introducing that stuff a little too fast, but not too fast, just a little bit, you know? So not bad, but it's just kind of leaves you thirsty for an episode 3 and to see where this show's actually planning to go with this stuff it's set up, because it's an interesting premise so far. A weak but not unnecessarily weak episode 2, I would say. One that just kind of tides you over, maybe just a little bit on the rise to episode 3, but we really want to see what this show's going to give us. And I don't think, if you're like me, you don't feel like episodes 1 and 2 really give you that. So, good stuff. Beyond that, I don't know that there's a whole lot to talk about video game world. I did catch my 2 Cyndaquils, for my 2 Pokemon games. I used an anchor point strategy. And to me it feels like, well, there's certainly, trickinesses to this one. It didn't feel that bad simply because it sort of felt like, see, my 2 Anger Point Pokemon are defensively invested. They're designed to take physical hits. So the fact that this boss deals special damage primarily should kind of tell you, okay, yeah, I guess there just wasn't that high of a priority to, retrain. Just, did it with my Anger Point Pokemon to see if I could do it. And it wasn't the most flawless execution, but it was an execution that successfully demonstrates, I guess, the validity of an Anger Point strategy. And it took into account what went wrong with the Samurott raid, but that one still succeeded anyways. So this one was just executed better. So, I took my Crocodile and I gave it the Dark type, because Anger Point, you're going to kill them before you have a chance to terrestrialize, right? Well, no, this time I kind of planned on terrestrializing. So Crocodile was not concerned with one-hit KOing them. I just kept the attack up and, make sure it crit so its attack was maxed, so it could attack and take a big chunk of damage. But the goal was to get 3 attacks in, and then the next time it recovered, it would terrestrialize and hit. And my Honchkrow, again, physically invested, not specially invested, in theory its goal was to raise that attack, lower that defense, attack cheer, and never quite got around to doing all 3. It just took too much damage, but I kind of expected that. And it's a better choice than some of the other Pokemon, just because the others are weak to things that would completely obliterate them. One eruption later, and Meowscarada is Meowscadetta, I guess. But overall, its health got whittled down enough. It wasn't outside of its shield, but it had barely any shield left when that crucial moment came up. It's like, alright, critical hit, terrestrialize, and whatever that one thing is. Forgot the name. And that worked. The end. Cyndaquil easily acquired. not that any of y'all who maybe had trouble should say, oh yes, it's definitely easy, but just like, you know, it was easy enough for me for what I was doing. Let's see. Animal Crossing, I finally uploaded the latest version of my islands to Dream Island, and I think I'm pretty much putting the games down until who knows when, maybe for the rest of the time. Probably not, because you know, I'm going to see my parents this weekend, and I have at least one painting to give my mom, so I'll probably give that to her. But other than that, it was just a little bit of Dead by Daylight. And while there was a lot more Survivor that happened on Saturday than usual, because I played with some of the friends from one of the servers I'm on, you know, I kind of didn't do much yesterday, today. Didn't help that I had a headache all day. But, you know, just kind of relaxing, I guess. Maybe good setup for, Tears of the Kingdom, which I think comes out next month. So I should pre-order that so that I get my copy as soon as I can, I guess. But, you know, that's a whole lot of not much is going on. Hooray. Alright, so I'm uploading this video on Tuesday, April 18th interview in the US. I hope that you've done your taxes. If you haven't done them yet, then I hope you get your extension. Or if you don't need to do them, congrats. Even if they're simple taxes like mine, you know, I have a very simple lifestyle, given its eccentricness, of course, but a very simple lifestyle that the government doesn't care about. Just give us your weight in gold, and there you go. Here you go, government. Be happy. You know, my taxes are very simple. Hopefully y'all's can be relatively simple too. Or they're complicated, but you make a lot of money because you're doing that and you enjoy that. You know, hope for the best. Y'all, have a nice week.